Focus now on coronavirus in the workplace. If you are formally employed, you may be wondering what will happen if you contract the virus. How will sick leave work? What are your and your company's obligations? Well, to help us answer some of these questions is Johan Olivier, partner in the employment service at law firm Webber Wentzel. Thank you so much for coming into the studio. First of all, let's deal with what are the obligations of the employer?
Morning, Sally. Morning to your viewers as well. The first obligation is in terms of the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So an employer is to ensure that his workplace is healthy and safe for his workers, as far as reasonably practicable. So that means in this times of a coronavirus, the first thing that an employer needs to do is, how am I going to communicate? What rules am I going to lay down? What protocols do I set? And for that, you need to have a committee. So I would say, get together your human resources manager, your risk and compliance manager. If you're a bigger company, like some of the mining companies also have occupational health practitioners in their employ. So get those knowledgeable people around the table, set rules, communicate what in fact the company's protocols are so that employees know what to do. You have information from the World Health Organization, you have information from the Department of Health, the Institute of Communicable Diseases. You can look at our website as well. We set some guidelines and rules there. And then the most important thing at the moment is, because it's such a contagious disease, you need to set rules relating to travel.
I was just going to ask you about travel. I mean, how do you decide? Is it safe to send someone? And what if a worker says, well, I don't really feel safe even if you want me to go there? Who gets the final say?
I think let's look at that as well. The first thing that you think about is you have China, you have Italy, you have certain hotspots across the world where there's been a number of reported cases and deaths. So the first thing you want to do is set a rule. We don't want you to travel to those countries. You must restrict travel overseas if you can. It's only if it's really necessary. And secondly, in relation to private travel, you also need to know from the 1st of February, when the disease really started showing its face, where have your employees been travelling to? Like we've seen now with the couple and the 10 people who've just returned from Italy and what effect it had on South Africa. So you need to know where people have been travelling. So employees may be reluctant to share that, but they need to understand that they also have a duty towards their fellow employees to ensure their own safety and health. So you need to have that type of disclosure relating to travel, and you need to set rules. For instance, big conferences, they're being cancelled all over the world at the moment because it's a large gathering of people and the risk of contagion is therefore great.
Let's look at sick leave, and specifically, let's say I develop a cough and a friend of mine was sort of linked to someone in China, but I'm not totally sure. I decide to do the safe thing and I stay at home, even though normally I wouldn't with a normal cough. Will that be taken off my sick leave?
Yeah, I think let's just look at, there are three different scenarios there. The first scenario is that you, as the employer, decide, I set certain rules. So if you've traveled to a country where there is risk, I want you to, in fact, go into quarantine for 14 days. And then you need to decide, is that quarantine on special leave? Because that is at your behest as the employer. Secondly, if the employee then gets tested and shows signs of the symptoms of the COVID-19 virus, then it will be sick leave if a medical certificate is issued. In terms of a Basic Conditions of Employment Act, if you are sick and you present a medical certificate from your doctor, your medical practitioner, then you get booked off sick, and it's sick leave which is fully paid. So special leave could also be fully paid if it's at the behest of the employer. Now the second one is if you decide there's too great risk, I don't want to go to work, I'm going to self-impose quarantine or isolation for 14 days. Your employer just is informed this is what I'm doing. Now, then the employer can say, I'm not going to pay you because you have to make that decision yourself. Unless you present a medical certificate, then, of course, it can be sick leave. So you need to lay down rules to, in fact, determine what happens. A difficult situation is, for instance, if the Department of Health comes and decides to close a business or a school, like we've had in Italy. Then it's at the behest of the government. that that whole institution is closed and the employees can't come to work, the employer says, I want to continue working, but I can't. It's an impossibility of performance, I'm not going to pay. So it's a nuanced situation that we need to think through very carefully and deal with appropriately, and that reason also the employer has to think through that particular situation.
Lots of iterations. Thank you very much for coming in to chat to us. That was Johan Olivier of Webber Wentzel. Well, let's turn